Society, or at least some parts of it, has this habit of dictating what makes a successful career. I'm not here to deliver some empty speech designed to bash society, but I'm pretty sure that when it comes to the future, society knows about as much as we do. When we talk about careers, society is like that awkward uncle at family dinners who spends 30 minutes giving you dating advice. Usually you know uncle doesn't really know what he's talking about, or that his advice is about 50 years out of date. But here's the thing, society is that uncle, and our conventional beliefs are like his dating tips. Except, in this case, instead of ignoring him, we hang on every word and then make major career decisions based on what he says. This video, and maybe the ones that follow, aren't career tutorials, but a chance to give you a framework I find useful. It's something you can use to make decisions about your future that truly reflect who you are, what you want, and what our ever-changing professional landscape looks like today. So yeah, you're not an expert in this field, but I think you're definitely more qualified to determine what's right for you than our collective out-of-touch uncle. Anyway, for those of you who haven't started your career yet and aren't sure what you want to do with your life, or for those who are already deep into it and aren't sure if you're on the right path, I hope these videos will help reset your thinking and give you some clarity. To start, let's go back to the beginning, childhood. For most of us, it's a bit like a video game, and we're the players given quests. We didn't choose the game, we just found ourselves in a match programmed for us by our parents, society, and circumstances. We're taught the rules of the game, how to play it, and what our objectives are. Our job isn't to think about our path, but to succeed in the game we've been handed, according to the definition of success given to us, like becoming rich, famous, happy, or owning a car. Then we find ourselves in a middle zone called middle school, high school, and college. We might have some say in which particular level we play on, but in the end, the levels aren't all that different from each other. Then, about 20 years into this complex video game where we were the players, we're suddenly kicked out and asked to make something of our lives by becoming the developers. Here's the problem. At this point, you're without skills, knowledge, and a lot of other things. But before we dive into that, let's address the elephant in the room. Your preset destiny comes to a screeching halt. Kids in school are like characters in a game where someone else is the developer. Often you could say it's your parents, teachers, or any supervising figure. But in reality, no one is the developer of your life or your career path except for you. The problem is, at this moment you've spent your whole life becoming a skilled player, but you've got no experience as a developer of anything. You were in charge of micro decisions, like how to get good grades, and now you find yourself in control of the game, responsible for questions like, who am I? What's important in life? What are my options for the future? And what should I choose? They're not giving you any more quests. It's up to you to create them now. We're left feeling lost, not knowing what to do. But often, to avoid getting caught up in this existential upheaval, we choose a path, and that path becomes the story of our lives. Then, at the end of it all, we look back and see how things played out, finally getting a big picture view of the journey we took. This brings me to a point made by Bronnie Ware, a palliative care nurse who studied people at the end of their lives and how they felt about the lives they lived. Her work highlights the fact that many people experience deep regrets. Given what we've talked about, it's clear that a lot of these regrets come from the fact that most of us weren't really taught how to shape our futures when we were kids, and some people never learn how, even as adults. So many look back on a life that doesn't really make sense compared to who they are and the world around them. Ignoring your own life can work for years, maybe even decades, but eventually reality catches up and you start questioning, did this path really suit me? Am I happy with the choices I made? But hey, don't worry, this video is here to help prevent that. So let's take a moment before we think about the end to look at the path we're on and where it's leading, making sure it actually makes sense. And to do that, we need to focus on ourselves and understand the difference between being an architect of our lives or just a handyman. Being an architect means thinking from basic concepts to build something entirely new. It's like creating a unique blueprint from scratch. On the other hand, a handyman thinks by comparison, following existing models with a few personal tweaks here and there, like building with pre-established instructions. These are two sides of the same coin: creation versus copying, originality versus conformity. Being an architect is tough. It takes time, while being a handyman is simpler and quicker. In the grand scheme of the time we have on Earth, being an architect might seem like a waste, and I get that. In some cases, it is. Sometimes, being a handyman is the best approach. For example, I stick to simple, effective recipes when cooking because I'm not looking to innovate in the kitchen. In that area, being a handyman makes perfect sense to me. But in other parts of life, it's different, like when it comes to your circle of friends, your choice of partner, or where you decide to live. So remember this concept and understand that your career decisions need to be made like an architect for 3 big reasons. First, your actions on this earth matter. Whether you realize it or not, your life impacts others, sometimes thousands of others, even if you're unaware. And all those people you influence will, in turn, affect even more lives. Even if you're skeptical, you've probably heard of the butterfly effect. Go back in time, trip some random person on the street, and you'd likely see changes in the present because of that single action. So, whatever shape your career takes, it will influence the world. Secondly, it won't just impact the world, it'll impact your life too. The fact is, your future career is going to consume thousands of hours, between 70,000 and 140,000, maybe more or less, but that's about a third of your life. And if you subtract childhood and basic needs, it might even be more. Finally, remember when you were a kid, and people would ask what you wanted to be when you grew up? And now, as an adult, when you talk about your job, it defines who you are. You don't just work in finance, you are a financial auditor. It might be messed up, but even if we point it out, we can't change the fact that this is how things are. Your career becomes your main identity, which is kind of a big deal, right? So, this isn't just about what you're having for dinner tonight. It's something important that deserves to be thought about, like an architect. Now that we've covered these ideas, let's introduce another key element. No matter where you are in life, you have a badge. I have one too. On that badge, 2 things might appear. First, there's a question mark that represents your uncertainty about your future career. It's that nagging anxiety you feel when everyone tells you to follow your passion or focus on your strengths. But like many others, you're not deeply passionate about just one thing or exceptionally skilled in a specific area. Maybe when you were younger, you wanted to be a paleontologist, but now things have changed. For some people, there's an arrow pointing in a certain direction, representing their ideal path. Yet, they still choose to go in the opposite direction, following a path they know isn't right for them. And even for those who know where they want to go and are heading in the direction of their arrow, it's still important to stop and ask, who really drew this arrow? Was it really me? This brings us to the structure we're going to build. Set your badge aside for now. We'll come back to it later. Right now, we're going to design the framework that will help you make major career and life decisions using this illustration. Imagine you have 2 boxes in front of you, and each one is essential in defining who you want to be. The first is the box of desires. It contains all the careers that you find appealing and interesting. The second is the box of reality. Inside, you'll find all the career paths that align with your realistic potential in each field, along with the general difficulty of succeeding in that area. Let's say your box of desires includes becoming an astronaut. Your box of reality will tell you if you have the potential for it. Maybe you've always had a scientific mind or have been working towards this goal, and also how tough it is to make it in that field, which in this case is extremely hard. Or maybe you want to be a chef. On one hand, you're just okay at cooking, but on the other, you're willing to learn, and people have already noticed your creative potential in the kitchen. Plus, the barrier to entry is more manageable if you're serious about it. The overlap between your desires and reality is where you'll find your optimal career paths, the arrows you should consider drawing on your badge. This is your pot of options. And while it might sound simple, in reality, filling these boxes accurately is harder than it seems. It requires being as honest with yourself as possible. As you move forward, remember this: life isn't about just following the path others have set for you. It's about being the architect of your own journey. Take a moment to reflect. What do you truly want, and what's actually possible? The overlap between these two is where your future lies. So, grab that badge and start designing your own path, not just following someone else's. After all, this is your life, and you deserve to live it on your terms. Let's make sure when we look back we see a life that truly reflects who we are.